now we're going to get into their match. I think Luis is going to need this win to secure his place in Top Cut, but it seems pretty guaranteed, I think, at this point in terms of resistance. So both these players also experienced. Luis, for those that don't know, he has played VGC in the past before. He took a break in 2016 because he wasn't a huge fan of the rules, but he's back here, at least in the underground, so we're going to get into it in just a minute. Okay, we just got to switch screens in a sec. You guys can start. Yeah, you're good. Oh, yeah, they can start. And then could you just switch the standings away? Thank you. All right, cool. So we're gonna get into it. These players are just getting their team select on. Okay, so just as a reminder, we have Marty's team here. It's gonna be Celesteela, Salamence, Oranguru, Tapu Koko, Alolan Marowak, and Gastrodon. Whereas Luis here has Mudsdale, Porygon 2, Vikavolt, Pelipper, Tapu Koko, and Celesteela. So both players share the Celesteela, the Tapu Koko. They both have a potential Trick Room setter in Oranguru and Porygon 2. Both have a ground type in Mudsdale. Differences here being the Mudsdale and Gastrodon. The differences here are the Salamence and the Vikavolt and the Pelipper and the Marowak. The good news here, though, for Marty is that Marowak can be relatively safe next to a Gastrodon, which is going to eat up Storm Drains and not really worry about attacks from the Vikavolt or the Tapu Koko, actually, or the Porygon for that matter, and the Celesteela. Really, Gastrodon just has the Mudsdale potentially to worry about. So that's nice for Marty. I would be very surprised if Gastrodon didn't come to play. However, Marowak also does work because it's going to be able to eat up electric type attacks from both of Luis's electric type Pokemon. So definitely some advantages there on Marty's side. But Luis definitely, if he plays it, it looks like a little bit slower of a team, but if he plays it right, he's got some very powerful attackers. Mudsdale, very high attack. Also, Stamina can make it very physically bulky. Porygon 2, depending on its some of its utility moves, like an Ice Beam, would be able to help against Salamence quite well. So it's definitely not over, since it hasn't even started. So let's see what these players led with. We're going to see Celesteela and Marowak coming out from Marty here. And we're going to see Tapu Koko and Pelipper coming out for Luis. So Luis setting up all of the terrain effects. We're going to see electric terrain come out. And then we're going to see the rain set up by the Pelipper with its drizzle ability that it recently got in this generation. So as it stands, Pelipper's definitely threatened, or no, not Pelipper. Actually, both of Marty's Pokemon are threatened. Tapu Koko could get off a very powerful discharge, and Marowak could go down to a very powerful Hydro Pump. However, a simple switch in from Gastrodon can pretty much derail all of Luis's plans, because it would redirect the Water-type attack from Pelipper, and it would not worry about a discharge. Marowak already doesn't worry about a discharge, so that seems like a very easy switch for Marty to make, and then he could just get off like a Boomerang onto Tapu Koko. Actually, Luis is going to switch out his Pelipper for the Mudsdale, which will put alternative pressure on the Marowak, which can't be redirected, and indeed we do see the Gastrodon come out for Marty. It's going to make the discharge do nothing, actually, to anybody, because the Mudsdale is also ground type. So really kind of a null turn, except the Marowak, of course, which goes for the Boomerang, which is super effective, and because of how strong Alolan Marowak is, he's going to get the knockout onto Tapu Koko. So that was a nice pivot from Luis, because he recognized that Pelipper wasn't going to be doing much, but unfortunately, he took a gamble on that Tapu Koko that didn't quite pay off. And he did lose it because of that. So he's going to have to bring in something other than Pelipper, whatever his fourth Pokemon is, and hope. Well, actually, he's just going to bring in the Pelipper. You know, I guess he does have the option to go for something like a Hurricane, which is can't miss in the rain. So that would give him a way to touch the Gastrodon or the Marowak if that's what he wanted. But I think really what he's looking to do is go for an Earthquake here and try and knock out Marowak in one turn, so that, well, so that his Tapu Koko could have done something, but it looks like that isn't an option anymore because it fainted. So definitely something Luis will have to remember for game 2. Marty, on the other hand, it seems pretty safe to go for something like a Muddy Water. It'll be boosted by the rain. Pelipper will resist it, but it's really not a big deal to him right now. Marowak actually just going to go ahead and protect, so it's not worried about an Earthquake. Hurricane comes out onto the Gastrodon, not doing a whole lot of damage. If you recall from the earlier game, it was Assault Vest. Muddy Water comes out and actually misses the Mudsdale, which is fantastic for Luis, probably just what he needed. We see a high horsepower correctly predicting the Protect, doing a lot of damage to the Gastrodon, possibly in range of a Hurricane. So if Luis plays this right, he could high horsepower into Marowak, single target for a lot of damage, and knock out the Gastrodon with a Hurricane and swing some momentum back into his side. And actually what's interesting is I wonder what is slower. Well, Mudsdale and Marowak are both very slow, so it'll be interesting here to see which Pokemon is faster. Gastrodon actually is going to switch out into Celesteela, which will take a Hurricane much, much better. But actually Luis predicts it and goes for a Scald onto the Marowak, which in the rain is going to get a knockout. So a fantastic read from Luis on his side, showing his experience as a Pokemon player. He's not one of these noob guys. He has been around the block before. The Earthquake coming out, though, trying to catch that Gastrodon as a secondary casualty, but it switched out into the Celesteela, which is not affected. Tapu Koko is going to come out now, probably in an attempt to get rid of that Pelipper, but it's severely threatened by the Mudsdale, which really Marty doesn't have a fantastic answer for outside of Gastrodon, which underspeeds. So I think at this point, he's going to have to do something like Leech Seed it around until it faints, or go for something like Dazzling Gleam. And it also depends on the item, because Mudsdale hasn't taken any damage. It very well could be an Assault Vest Mudsdale. Tapu Koko actually just goes for the Protect, though, to not worry about an Earthquake. Pelipper, though, sets up a Tailwind, which is going to be hugely instrumental. Although I don't really think it'll help the Mudsdale outspeed Tapu Koko, because Tapu Koko is just that fast. But the high horsepower does come out into the Tapu Koko. Leech Seeds go on to the Mudsdale. Going to slowly start to whittle away at that thing, but Marty really going to have to do that fast. And the other problem for him is that Heavy Slam is one of his attacks. Going to trigger stamina every time he uses it, so it's going to do less and less damage. Flamethrower is his third attack outside of Protect, or in third move outside of Protect, and that's not going to do a whole lot of damage in the rain. Maybe once that ends, it'll be useful, but in the meantime, it's really not going to be worth it. So I think for Luis at this point, if he can preserve the Pelipper and get rid of that Tapu Koko, actually, you know what Luis really could use is a way to get rid of the Celesteela. But Marty is actually going to switch in the Gastrodon to eat up the Scald coming out from Celesteela, boosting it special attack with a Storm Drain. But I have a feeling that a high horsepower is going to be coming out into the Gastrodon, and that's going to that's going to take it out, so it's not going to get a chance to use that boost. Gastrodon, though, avoids some attack. I looked away for half a second and missed it. What was it? How? Oh, yeah, that's right. High horsepower has 95 accuracy, so it can miss. And in that case, it was a huge boon for Marty. It's going to let its Gastrodon stick around and be annoying for one more turn. Still pretty convinced that it's not going to handle a Hurricane very well, but the rain has ended, so that means that Pelipper isn't going to be 100% accurate with the Hurricane anymore, and it means that Flamethrower is going to be hitting Mudsdale for decent damage. Not great, because Celesteela is probably not very invested in its special attack. But actually, this is a pretty close match right now, and what it all comes down to for Marty is whether or not he can get rid of the Mudsdale, because it's going to be causing it already looks like it's causing a lot of problems. Trying to just go. Oh, actually, you know what? It looks like that's not a that is not a stamina Mudsdale. It must be own tempo. So Muddy Water actually is going to come out because the Gastrodon survived the Rock Slide, and it's going to get a knockout onto the Mudsdale, which is huge for Marty, because now his Tapu Koko can wait out the Tailwind, come in, and just start discharging in Luis's face. So very good play for Marty to finally get rid of that Pokemon. I think Luis probably might have underestimated the Gastrodon a little bit, of course, but the Vikavolt is still a good option. Actually, it's a really good option because if you can get rid of the Gastrodon with an Ice Beam or a Hurricane, I mean, it's almost, it's on its last slug leg. You can just go for a Thunderbolt onto something like the Celesteela, even onto a Tapu Koko that might want to switch in. It's going to take a lot of damage from a Thunderbolt after it sets up an electric terrain. So, I did think I set the timer. 1 second, guys. I did not set the timer right. So, it's okay, though. I mean, it hasn't been 50 minutes. So, sorry about that, guys. So, we do see the Tapu Koko switch in for the Gastrodon, and the Celesteela protects. Tapu Koko is going to take an Ice Beam. That's actually going to do a lot of damage. I'm going to see Thunder come out into the Celesteela. So now Leftover is going to come out. The Tailwind peters out, and that's actually very important. That's going to help. That is going to help Marty outspeed again with his Tapu Koko. So that is going to be a huge help for him. The real question is, I wonder how much damage does Vikavolt take from an electric type attack? And actually, you know what? An even bigger problem is that Marty just protected, so Tapu Koko is not quite free to just go for Discharge. Yeah, see, it just goes for the Thunderbolt, picking up a KO onto the Pelipper, which means... And Celesteela actually can go for a Flamethrower. That's right. With the Bug type, Vikavolt is going to take a little less than 75, or a little less than half. We see a Flash Cannon come out. Does that do enough to Tapu Koko? It does, because that thing has monstrous special attack. I believe it's something like 143. Oh, but you know what? That Life Orb is going to come back to bite Luis, because it is going to probably take him in range of Flamethrower. Let's see, was that Luis's last Pokemon? I'm drawing a blank. Should be taking notes. Gastrodon's going to come out, though, for Marty. Yeah, that is Luis's last Pokemon. So, unless that was a speed tie, and he can get off a Thunderbolt onto the Celesteela and pick up a knockout, it's going to be a problem for him. Then he can try to mop up the Gastrodon, but it's not going to be the case. Flamethrower coming out is going to pick up the knockout, which means Marty takes Game 1 with a 2-0 victory, although that very easily could have gone in Luis's favor. Both of these players played very, very well. So now, I think the thing that Luis has to consider is how does he handle Tapu Bulu, or not Tapu Bulu. He might wish he had Tapu Bulu. How does he handle the Gastrodon and the Marowak from disrupting the rest of his plans with those switches? I think he needs to really focus that thing down. We saw, how did he get rid of it? A high horsepower actually did a lot of work, and if he can get a high horsepower and something else into that attack before the Gastrodon can even do anything, particularly on a switch, would be all the better. He might have a good shot of getting rid of it early on, and then his Pelipper is free to put in a lot of work. So we're going to go and get into Game 2 now, and for Marty though, I think he really had a good game plan. He brought the Pokemon that he needed. I really don't think Salamence is going to be a huge help there. I think if he just keeps using the Marowak to redirect electric type attacks, and he uses the Gastrodon to redirect water type attacks, he's going to have a lot easier time. I wonder whether Tailwind isn't the option though for Luis, because we saw it didn't help the Mudsdale outspeed the Celesteela. Maybe Trick Room on that Porygon could be helpful, and maybe Porygon could be helpful just for its sheer bulk. I think also Luis will want to preserve his Tapu Koko a lot more. He did lose it very early in that first set, unfortunately, and I think that would have come in very helpful against the Celesteela in later rounds. Luis also probably wishes, he might want to bring his own Celesteela. He doesn't have as good answers to Tapu Koko as Marty does, but he does have a way to check Marowak, so if he can get his Celesteela onto the field and eliminate its threats, it's going to actually be able to cause a lot of problems for Marty. It also depends on what his set is. Marty does have the Flamethrower, so if it came down to a Celesteela Stalwart, Marty might win in the end. But both Porygon 2 and Celesteela, which sat on the bench for Luis last game, could be very useful for him here. Actually, and both of them would be very good just for some clean switching options. So we're going to get into this game. Game 2, can Marty take it in a 2-0 set? Will we finally get a 3-game set on the stream for you guys? Actually, I don't know if we've had one yet, but maybe round 2. I forget. Anyway, we're going to see Gastrodon and Celesteela coming out for Marty. For Luis, we're going to see Pelipper, and we do see the Porygon too. Luis mixing it up a little bit, not wanting to lose that Tapu Koko. The rain is going to get set up, which will be appreciated by Gastrodon probably more than Pelipper, and Porygon unfortunately gets the attack boost from the download when it probably wanted a special attack. The other thing here that's interesting, it always kind of depends on what set Porygon 2 runs, because we've seen a lot of different things. It usually runs Tri-Attack, it usually runs Recover, but its other moves can vary wildly. So it could have Thunderbolt to touch the Celesteela, and that could be a problem for Marty. We see a Hurricane do a decent amount of damage to Gastrodon, and a Lead Seed come out onto the Porygon. Muddy Water is going to come out instead. Actually, I wonder if that means that Porygon went for the Trick Room. We're going to see it do not a lot of damage. Does it get no accuracy drops? No, that's actually just a very, very slow Porygon. Going for the Tri-Attack, doesn't get any status, and now the Leaf Seed damage is going to take a little bit more HP. Not really going to heal the Celesteela because it was untouched. But Marty here, looking in a pretty good position. Gastrodon will be able to live another Hurricane just fine and can do about another third of damage to both of Luis's Pokemon with a Muddy Water if he can hit both times. So I think this is here where Luis has to realize that maybe that strategy didn't quite work perfectly and he has to mix it up. Marowak actually comes in now, though, possibly anticipating, the Hurricane. So that was a kind of safe move, but Marowak's still going to take about half damage, while Celesteela just takes the opportunity to set up another Leech Seed. So it's going to be Leech and Life from both these Pokemon, but the Trick Room goes up. And here's where it gets interesting, because Marowak is definitely slower than the Pelipper. So Pelipper probably not going to be able to get off a super effective Scald onto Marowak before Marowak hits it with something like a Shadow Bone. And at the same time, Marty now can just switch in that Gastrodon pretty much for free, because it's not worried about Tri-Attack, it's not worried about a Hurricane that much, and Celesteela's not going to target that. So I think this is a turn, again, where Luis, has to pivot around a little bit and try and get an advantage where he can. Vikavolt coming out, Marowak is actually going to protect. Probably didn't want to see if chance anything happening. Oh, because we see the Shadow Ball from the very slow Porygon. So we see a Heavy Slam come out instead, going on to the Porygon 2, but that is not going to pick up the knockout even after Lead Seed recovery. Now Marty has to worry whether or not his Marowak is in danger of taking a Shadow Ball. He could switch in something like the Gastrodon to take up that hit, and then hope that and knock the Porygon 2 out with the Heavy Slam from Celesteela. Alternatively, Luis may opt to recover, try and preserve that Porygon 2 a little bit longer, and because he knows that the Marowak is threatened, Marty could predict that, go for something with the Marowak, although in the rain, Flare Blitz is going to do as much damage to that Vikavolt, and Shadow Bone is going to not be able to touch Porygon 2, and it's only going to hit. Oh, okay, so Vikavolt is slow, but we see the Thunder. Luis forgetting that the Lightning Rod is still on the field. Didn't forget. Okay, so he expected to outspeed with the the Porygon to go first. So that was speed time. Didn't know his own speeds. Oh, and actually the Marowak is going to survive, and it's going to be able to pick up the knockout onto the Porygon 2, but it will definitely feign that last HP from recoil damage. So Luis gets what he wants. He gets what he wants, and now that Vikavolt is actually going to be incredibly threatening against that Celesteela. However, Marty does have a safe switch into Gastrodon, unless he puts that in that other slot. I imagine we'll see Tapu Koko, but that's not going to be very happy in the Trick Room either, because if Luis has something like Mudsdale in the back, he can high horsepower, get off a lot of damage, and that would be very problematic. At that point, actually, Luis could just discharge, and that might even be enough to get the knockout onto the Celesteela, and it could do some damage, some extra damage to the Tapu Koko. The real question is, though, I was not taking notes how much longer Trick Room is left. I think maybe there's only 2 turns max, but Marty might be able to stall out with some protects, and then have the advantage back on his side. Still, though, electric type attack is not going to be able to knock out that Vicky Volt. Maybe with that and a flamethrower, but the rain is still up too, so that makes it a lot trickier for him. Mudsdale is going to be very hard to knock out. Marty had a lot of problems with it before, and actually his Gastrodon is pretty much on Fainting's door, I guess, since Pokemon don't do the other thing. So really, Luis could ride Mudsdale to victory, and I did indeed mean that as a horse pun. Celesteela is going to switch out for Gastrodon. Thank you, Habib. Oh, actually, Gastrodon has more HP than I thought, but it still probably won't be able to survive a high horsepower. Tapu Koko does protect, and we're going to see an Earthquake come out. Not going to touch the Vicky Volt because it has Levitate, but it's going to do a good amount of damage to the Gastrodon, I imagine. Does it pick up the knockout, though? No, it doesn't. Gastrodon is going to live with 27 HP. Thunder doesn't affect Gastrodon. The rain stops, but the Trick Room is still up, and Gastrodon actually gets a little bit of HP back from the Leech Seed that Celesteela set up, so that's kind of nice. The real question here, though, Tapu Koko is probably going to switch out for Celesteela because it doesn't want to take a ground type attack, but Gastrodon is AV, so it doesn't have Assault Vest, so it doesn't have Protect, and it's not going to be able to knock out that Mudsdale with Muddy Water without the rain. So it's probably going to go down, and that might cause problems for Marty. Granted, he does have a good Pelipper check still in Tapu Koko. So we just see the Mudsdale is going to go first. It underspeeds, and that's going to definitely take out Gastrodon. The real question is here, does Vikavolt land the Thunder that I'm very confident it went for onto the Celesteela, because that could be huge for Luis. It does go for it, and it does land. It doesn't get the electric terrain boost, but that's very strong. It doesn't get the knockout easily. So now Marty's got to face down Mudsdale with just Tapu Koko. Excuse me. The Trick Room does reverse. Excuse me, let me get a little bit of water here. The Trick Room does reverse, so Marty's able to do something like Dazzling Gleam. However, that's not going to be enough. Marty knows when he's beat. He's going to go for the forfeit, I think, just to get into Game 3. He must know what his game plan is. I think the Trick Room mode was much better for Luis there. He played that well, and like we said, he adjusted. He leveraged that Mudsdale to get rid of the Gastrodon, and it led him to victory. So the other thing that I think that's interesting is that the Mudsdale underspeeds the Gastrodon, so that really does make Trick Room very, very good for Luis. He can pretty much bring in, set up the Trick Room, bring in Mudsdale, and just start earthquaking everything. And once he gets rid of the Marowak, he can Thunder the Celesteela with his Vikavolt. I think he's found the play here. Now, Marty is the one who's going to have to adjust for Game 3 and try and get rid of the Trick Room option. He does have a couple tools. He could try to reverse it if he has Trick Room on his Oranguru. Oranguru also often carry Taunt. And Porygon 2 usually needs an Eviolite to be a viable Pokemon, so it doesn't have a Mental Herb to block the Taunt. So Marty has an easy way to shut that down. If Roar is also on his team, he has options there. But that also, the problem is if Marty focuses extra hard on getting rid of the Trick Room, he's going to sacrifice one of his offensive Pokemon. So he's either not going to have to bring back Celesteela, or he's not going to bring back either the Marowak or the Gastrodon. And honestly, both of those he really needs. So at this point, if he does bring the Oranguru, he needs to leave the Celesteela behind because it only puts in so much here. However, if he does want to keep the same Pokemon, he can just try to double target it down. But you know what? Porygon 2 is a really fat duck, and that thing does not go down for anybody. So Taunt is probably just a more reliable option. But these players did decide their teams, so we're going to go ahead and get into it. We see Tapu Koko and Salamence actually come out from Marty, and we're going to see Porygon 2 and Mudsdale, just like I mentioned, for Luis. We did see the Intimidate actually is going to be very nice for Luis here. It's going to keep that Mudsdale from doing quite as much damage. We have also seen from other games that it's a special meds, so that's going to be able to hit Mudsdale on that side as well, instead of its physical side. And Porygon 2 also, I think so far we've seen Trick Room, Shadow Ball, and Tri-Attack. Don't know if it has Ice Beam yet. That could be a problem for Salamence. Tapu Koko, though, still very threatened here. Okay, Luis actually going to just switch out the Mudsdale for Pelipper, which will set up the rain. But the real question is, does Luis go for the Trick Room, and does Marty have anything to stop it? Tapu Koko actually goes for the Thunderbolt, does it into the Porygon slot, and we're going to see the Z move, which is Devastating Drake, coming out from Marty. Look at how nice he's dressed, too, by the way. So fashionable. So I'm not sure exactly how much this is going to do. I don't think I've actually seen a Draco Meteor level Devastating Drake go into a Porygon 2 before. This is very, very bulky. I really wouldn't be surprised if it survived. Let's see, though. Oh, it does get the knockout, so that is going to be very bad news for Luis. However, he does have Tailwind on his Pelipper, so that's still an option. But the real issue here is he now is going to be down a whole Pokemon. Mud's still going to be vulnerable to a Draco Meteor. At least doesn't have to worry about the Devastating Drake so much. And now it doesn't have to worry about the Intimidate. So it will still be able to deal with that Tapu Koko, hopefully fast, because Pelipper only is going to get one turn of Protect at most. So he's going to need to get that Oko pretty much now. For Marty, though, I think his goal here, Salamence is definitely threatened by Pelipper's Ice Beam, though. So he maybe want to switch out into something that's not quite as threatened. Depends on what he has in the back, though, because he, like we said, he had to get rid of one of the Pokemon, and either Gastrodon or Marowak isn't going to want to switch in on a potential Earthquake from Mudsdale. So that is definitely tricky for him if he doesn't have Celesteela in the back. Yeah, so Tapu Koko is actually going to just go for the Dazzling Gleam, but Luis doesn't protect the Pelipper. Draco Meteor coming out onto the Mudsdale. Let's see if it does enough to knock it out. Mudsdale is going to take that like a champ. That is absolutely an Assault Vest Mudsdale. Ice Beam coming out onto the Salamence. That's going to get a knockout, no problem. And I wonder if... oh, are you joining me? Okay, Habib is going to join me. Your headset's not on. So anyway, Earthquake's going to come out onto the Tapu Koko, going to do a lot of damage, but does that pick up the Oko? Actually, it brings it down to its Focus Sash. So that is definitely a problem for Luis, but he got very lucky in that Marty expected the Pelipper to protect, which means that the Dazzling Gleam didn't get the knockout on Pelipper, and it now has this turn to protect. Mudsdale's going to have no problem just Earthquaking again, or even High Horsepower. Celesteela does switch in, though. So Marty could have switched in his Gyarados, that instead of the Salamence, which would have been nice for him.
Does Rave have Koko in the back?
I don't know. He hasn't revealed his fourth Pokemon yet. It was he had a Porygon. Is the only other thing we saw.
Okay.
So, oh, your mic's on. Look at that. So it really depends. I imagine well, I guess we're gonna find out whether he has Koko in the back.
Ooh,
no, he has Vikavolt. So Vikavolt actually is pretty good. Not gonna worry about the Earthquake either. Tapu Koko though does go for the Protect. Well, I imagine the Celesteela will want to set up something like a Leech Seed. Yeah, look at that.
Oh wow.
And it goes on the Mudsdale. The real question here though is, did Marty bring Gastrodon?
Do that much?
No, well actually it does. You'd be surprised. It's going to do a decent amount of Celesteela. I mean, for Celesteela. Okay, actually, I think it was a low roll that time. Because I saw it do way more. Anyway, though, the real question here is, did Marty bring the Gastrodon in the back for his fourth Pokemon, or did he bring Marowak? Because if he, actually, in either case, he could just, if he brought the Gastrodon, he could just switch that in for the Celesteela, and if he brought the Marowak, he can switch that in for his Tapu Koko. However, Mudsdale's going to do a lot of damage to whatever switches in, so that's going to be a big problem. Marty really needs to preserve that Tapu Koko, though, because... actually, you know what? Maybe he doesn't. What he really needs to do is get rid of that Mudsdale. Celesteela actually goes for the Protect here, so Marty isn't going to worry about a Thunder. Dazzling Gleam coming out from the Tapu Koko. Going to do a little bit to both these Pokemon. Actually, we see a Bug Buzz come out for the Mudsdale in the Tapu Koko. Yeah, well, I mean, it's got 1 HP, so yeah. That does the job. And the Life Orb damage coming back. What?
I can't believe I just said that would kill.
Yeah, right. Like as if that wasn't the most obvious thing in the world. So we see the Earthquake come out, but nothing's going to happen there. Well, Celesteela does get the last HP that it was missing from the leftovers, and I get a little bit more from the Leech Seed.
Mudsdale is a scary mon.
Yeah, if you can enable it and you're not ready for it, the problem is for Marty is that all he has is the Gastrodon really to do a lot of damage, or because it's Assault Vest, so what's it called? The Salamence didn't do a whole lot. Now Marty might be looking at his first loss of the tournament because Luis has, Marty only has the Marowak, which is, actually, you know what? Marowak can outspeed and pick up that last bit of damage onto the Mudsdale.
And Vigavolt can't do much.
Like a Bug Buzz, I guess.
And we have Leech Seed already on Mudsdale, so that might take out the kit. Will that kill the Leech Seed?
It'll knock out, probably.
So
Pokemon don't die, Habib. Ha ha ha. Anyway, but he just protected with the Celesteela, so he could protect with the Marowak and just try to let it go down. But I'm pretty confident he outspeeds that Mudsdale underspeeds Gastrodon and Trick Room. So like Marowak is for sure faster than Gastrodon. It outspeeds Gastrodon and Trick Room.
Okay.
Sorry. Celesteela goes for the Heavy Slam onto the Mudsdale, actually being the fastest thing on the field. It is going to get the knockout, the last bit of damage.
Is the fastest thing on the field.
Right, I know. That's just absurd. It's going to get a Beast Boost in that special defense. Flare Blitz coming out. Does that do enough in the rain? I mean, Marowak is a beast.
Yeah, Vigavolt doesn't have that great of defenses.
No. It's pretty much just an all-in special attack. So actually, I thought things were pretty bad for Marty, but it looked like without the Trick Room on Luis's side, he had a big problem. What's it called? The Pelipper is going to come out for Luis, but it's not going to do a whole lot. It does have some damage. He'll be able to knock out the Marowak, no problem. But Celesteela is, easily going to be able to stall it down.
Yeah.
All it needs is one Leech Seed, and that's pretty much game.
Is there an accuracy on Leech Seed? Is it like 90?
It can miss. I don't know exactly what it is, but you can miss with it. We saw it miss in games before. You might have been playing though.
Yeah, I think I was playing.
So, I think that's going to be it for Luis, and that is going to be it for this round. We just have to wait for everything to happen. Marowak does go for the Protect, probably expecting a Scald, though let's see if Luis predicted that. It did. Goes for the Ice Beam onto the Celesteela, although it must be going for the Freeze. But it doesn't get it. And actually, Marty just says, I don't want to wait this out with Leech Seed. I'm just going to slam away. So the Heavy Slam comes out, does a decent bit of damage, heals off most of what he took from the Ice Beam.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the game, though I'm pretty sure Luis is definitely still going to top cut. He's got good resistance from Marty. Although we're not using Tom. We're not using Tom, so he's just going to go for the Tailwind and take the win. So players shaking hands. That's going to be it for these for the Swiss rounds here. Now, I think that might have been the last game. Maybe there's one more going on right now. We need some stragglers. And then from there, we'll have our top cut, very exciting top four, where these players will compete for, I think, because less people showed up now, it's an $80 prize pool, where the winner gets $50, and the second place player gets $30. But hey, still money, and still comes in handy. So we'll be right back with our first game of, actually, we're going to do all the 3 games of Top Cut. We'll do both top 4s, and then we'll do the finals. So we'll have some games for you in just a little bit. Stick around and keep being beautiful.